Welcome to Chatting with Casey with your host, Casey Palmer. 2019's live from the 3.5, episode 1. What is Blackness exactly? Welcome to Chatting with Casey. The podcast is all about family, food, fashion, and faith, and travel, and tech, and creating the space to tell the Black Canadian stories that might never be told otherwise. If you've ever listened to an episode of Chatting with Casey before, you've already realized this is not a regular episode. In fact, it's the first of a whole lot of bonus episodes as we run through them daily throughout February for Black History Month. In a culture that's steeped deeply in oral tradition, I figured what better way to share Black Canadian stories in 2019 than to do it through podcasts. What I've learned from a number of the people who decline my invites in years past is that not everyone's a writer. We have performers and thinkers and historians galore, but it's one thing to have the knowledge. It's another entirely to find the right format to package it in so that others will actually listen. And that's where I come in. Using my years of experience creating content, I want to take the stories and knowledge from my fellow Black Canadians and put it into a format which will really help to further the cause. And the first story for 2019's Live from the 3.5 is from Asante Houghton, a fellow dad, Black Canadian, and mental health advocate. We randomly connected through Mental Health Toronto's Twitter chat that happened the other night, and the conversation we had was a great way to kick off the month. So sit back, open your mind, and let's get this series started with 2019's Live from the 3.5, Episode 1. What is Blackness exactly? I hope you give it a whirl. Hey y'all, so we're here on Chatting with Casey, the Live from the 3.5 edition. We're here for Black History Month, just chatting with other prominent Black Canadians about different aspects of Black Canadian culture every day for the month. You're going to get sick of my voice by the end of this month, but you know what? Roll with it. We're going to learn you something. On today's episode, we have Asante Houghton.
Yes.
Asante, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm not sure I'm prominent, but I'll take it.
Go with it. No, own it.
No,
own the
okay.
prominence.
I'm
it's a good thing,
it.
right?
I'm going to own it. It's a new chapter.
So I got actually, you and I haven't known each other very long. I think it's been literally like 24 hours or less.
Probably less than 24 hours, actually.
Yeah. Because I came like mid chat, like a 7 p.m. chat. Right now we're recording at 7:15, so like we're just shy of the 1 day mark. But that you need to educate me, while you educate everyone listening about who you are, what you do, and that will help me figure out what we're going to talk about. So you hit it. Go ahead.
All right, cool. I'm actually not good at like the self-promotion thing, but my name is Asante Houghton, and I would say, I'm prominent primarily because of my experience in the mental health field. I talk a lot about my story, but also I'm becoming sort of a thought leader in the mental health field in general, but also speaking from a context of someone who grew up in a low income situation, a Black male, someone I identify strongly with those things, and so really speaking about mental health from a lens that maybe isn't in the mainstream. So I do a lot of motivational speaking. I have 2 TEDx talks out there. I contributed to a book of mental health stories called Brainstorm Revolution. My 9 to 5 is I work at Stella's Place, which is a youth mental health organization in downtown Toronto. I manage a training and other programs there. I'm a peer support worker. I'm a community worker, a youth worker. And outside of that, I'm a huge sports fan, which sometimes, is the ire of my wife. Mostly I just really care about people, and I care about our society, and I care about the human race, and I care about moving us forward and, continuing to evolve to be more compassionate to each other.
So I don't know if we need to review the entire concept of prominence, but if not prominent, you're at least a busy guy involved in a lot of important work in the city. So I respect that.
I'm achieving prominence, The other piece is, so CAMH did this thing last year to celebrate 150 in Canada, recognizing the top 150 influencers in mental health. And I'm one of those people. So I'm one of the Cam
Hey,
H
hey.
150 influencers. So that's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well done on that.
Thank
Congrats to you.
Thank you.
So, okay, all right. I'm framing this in my head. This is good. So you're the first of the season. Like you're the first one on the podcast. This is a new thing we're trying out, and if I'm rusty, if it goes off kilter, I apologize right now.
You could blame me.
No. I'll take the L on this one. I will take the L.
All right.
But for day one, we're talking about what is Blackness.
Something I think about all the time.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep it like open ended to start with, and really drill into things as we go further through the month. But what I think happens in the city is that the entire idea of Black is like paints people into a box, and it just kind of like it's these 5 things basically, and I'm like, this is not that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up in Toronto, I'm 33 years old. I've been here since I was 30. No, I've been here for 31 years. Just it's been interesting as an observer to kind of see how Blackness has evolved in Toronto. When I was a kid in the early 90s, Blackness was very much something around. It was a lot about consciousness. And then, around the turn of the millennium, we got BET on cable here. And that, in my opinion, changed everything. And all of a sudden, Blackness became synonymous with Black Americans and how they express Blackness, along with all the stereotypes that come along with that. And, immediately I found myself being like my Blackness being questioned all the time. And it was just a really interesting phenomenon. And now it's funny because I kind of grew up as a nerdy kid. So I think that contributed to why people were, maybe questioning my Blackness or whatever. But then we moved to 2019 now, and it's cool to be a nerd. And and now it's like accepted in the Black community. People talk about, they're into anime and they do cosplay and they do all these different things and they play role-playing games. And it's like, that, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, we can make it work.
Okay. I'll say that stuff wasn't cool when I was growing up. And, it's just kind of been interesting. Like I look at it now from like a comical standpoint, whereas when I was like a teenager, I struggled a lot with like my identity because like I was very conscious of my Blackness. And I was very like, I would say that I was borderline militant about my Blackness in terms of my consciousness. But I guess the way that I expressed myself in terms of my behavior or what I did as hobbies and stuff like that, people were always questioning me, or the fact that, I was, more of a happy-go-lucky guy and not like an aggressive guy. People used to question me, like, how come you're not like, why do you smile so much? And I'm like, is that like a thing really? Like,
is that a real question? Like you don't know what this means?
Yeah. Like, is that what you're using to diminish my Blackness? That like, I smile a lot, so, like you said at the beginning, I find that, we have some problematic boxes that we want to throw people in, except everyone has a bit of a different box. So
it's very true.
It's
I relate. I probably relate to that more than I can articulate in a short amount of time. But like I'm come from I was a comic book, cartoon, video game kind of kid. So for me, like everything you mentioned when it comes down to like what the scene's like these days with what's cool and what's not, it's hilarious because like you said, like we were a lot of the people who would not be seen as like your stereotypical archetypal Black people have been on this for 2 decades. 3 decades. It's something that's just like, it's something I just did all the time. And I'm like, oh, now it's good.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is the shit I used to hide from like people at school. And now everyone is just, it's accepted. So that's different.
It's interesting. I mean, because the same things happened, all over the map. Like I'd say that for everybody, the entire idea of being a nerd and whatnot has changed where it's more accepted and whatnot. But it's almost special in our ranks as Black people because there's so much importance placed upon, how you represent, how you're seen,
time, man. Like, and I just you spend your time wanting to be like the coolest person around, and that's how your worth is kind of measured, right? I think there's a lot of like rapper worship and like athlete worship. Speaking from a male perspective, anyway, and I really think that contributes to it. And back in the day, before social media, our access to these celebrities was, probably through a lot of handlers and their media team, and so we got this curated image of what cool looked like, and we were, kind of taught that we had to be like, the rappers or the athletes in order to one be cool, but also to to be black, and that didn't leave a lot of room for a lot of normal people who maybe that's just not how they express themselves. And what was really interesting for me is that like I played basketball in high school, like pretty intensely, and I was a rapper, and so like in many ways I like did a lot of the stereotypical black things, but at the same time I was also a bookworm, and I thought about politics all the time, and that was probably my favorite thing to talk about when I was in high school. I was really into video games, and in particular like adventure games or role playing games. I was playing like a lot of Zelda or like Final Fantasy, and so maybe it was that stuff, or I don't know, maybe it was just the way I talked. My voice didn't change till I was like 20, so like I had all these things working against me.
Right.
But it was just a really interesting to kind of experience things a certain way. And yeah, growing up in a household where all the images on the walls were of black people, everything that, blackness was so emphasized in my household that I always knew that I was black. Like I never had, I think something that some of my friends have said is there were moments where they were like insecure about their blackness, in terms of whether they wanted to be black or not. I've never felt like I wanted to be anything but black ever in my life. And so, and like I said, I've always been into black issues. I've always, consumed black media, black music, black movies, black TV, all of it. And I used to like seek this stuff out, and I don't know. So it was really interesting that on a personal level, blackness was so important to me, and I was living it in a lot of ways. But because I didn't fit into certain boxes, people didn't perceive me that way, which then affected, my social world or my social relationships, or, even my romantic relationships, and all of that. So, it's interesting that, it's funny that as an adult, I've been celebrated for my blackness way more than I did as a kid. Yet I would,
get that.
and yet I would probably say that today at 33 years old, I'm far less militant than I was when I was a teenager, where I was like, I felt like I was a disciple of Malcolm X, like I was just, so yeah, all that's interesting for me to just reflect on.
I feel that. So would you say, and I think from just hearing you, I feel like I have an idea where this answer is going to go, but would you say that the entire idea of blackness is an individual conclusion of what that means versus there being this larger answer of what it means?
I think I'll answer that in two ways. I think that there are some folks who, in large part, a lot of this, not black enough stuff was coming from people who weren't even black, which is interesting. So I think, our media paints this image of what blackness is. And, many of those things are stereotypical, and many of those stereotypes are not necessarily constructive for, black people and how we interact in society. But yet we are kind of being told that we must fit into these boxes. And, I like to think about it from a historical perspective. A lot of these things are, we're told that we're not smart, but not even that we're not smart, but not to pursue intellectual things. Intellectual pursuits are not necessarily associated with blackness, or it's interesting. I used to work for 7 years with you know, mostly black teenagers in Toronto, supporting them through high school onto post-secondary. And it was very rare that I had one of these young people, men or women, say that they wanted to go to higher education for, STEM, so science, tech, etc. I say etc. because I forgot what the E and the M mean, but
Engineering.
engineering and math. Yeah, so
Yeah, young kids. I have young kids. I'm like, I know this. I got this.
right? So everyone was going into humanities. When I was at the University of Toronto, all of my friends who were black, none of them were in the sciences. I was in the sciences. I was in psychology, and they treat it as a science at U of T. All of my friends were in the humanities: political science, equity studies, Caribbean studies, etc. So, that stuff for me is challenging because I think what it does, like this box of blackness, I think what it does is that it forces people into ways of being that may not be authentic for them. And that creates a cognitive dissonance within a person, which can lead to, a lot of strife and internal misery, really. And then, because of that, folks might feel ostracized from their own community. They might feel like they have to make choices around, do they conform to what blackness is perceived to be, or do they, move in these other spaces, where there are few black people, in order to feel like they're living their authentic selves. But then the caveat to that is then no one in those spaces really understands your experience. You might share hobbies with them, but, a deeper under the surface life experience type stuff you just can't discuss with them because maybe they just don't get it. And, so that's challenging. So, this box of blackness that, we continue to create, though I think it's expanding a bit, is really restrictive, and I think creates a lot of challenges for people. And I really think that, for me, I think we just have to do a better job of, accepting people for who they are, where they're coming from, what they do, etc. For me, it's just like black is black, and I don't care if you're from Russia, or if you're from Toronto, if you're from Jamaica or Nigeria, or Colombia, whatever. For me, it's like there are certain things experienced as a black person that no matter where you're from, who your friends are, what your hobbies are shared. And I think when we start to ostracize people or put pressure on people to conform, what we do is we don't give individuals who have been harmed by the discrimination that black people face an opportunity to have solidarity with others, which is a protective factor against things like mental illness, right? So for me, I know at the beginning of this podcast we were kind of joking around about it, but for me, it's quite a big problem that we have in our community, and something that I think we need to address.
Well, I agree with that entirely. I mean, that's part of that is a driving factor as to why I put like the hours into this series every year, because we have this dangerous assumption that black is just one thing, and it's like one of the few cultures we have out there where everything's just kind of gets lumped together into one thing, even though we have this rich diversity of cultures and language and lifestyles and viewpoints is all kind of molded together to this one thing that's so loosely defined by just a skin color. And so my big thing is just, how do we really start to speak to all the different facets of what's there and show that we're more than just one thing? And that's what I'm trying to do with Live from the 3.5, to make sure that we remember that black isn't just one thing. And even though there are, like you mentioned, definitely the things that tie us together in the common experiences for better and for worse. But at the same time, there's so many layers beneath it that we need to keep in mind when we have discussions, keep in mind when we try to make policy changes to address the community and things like that. So what I'm hoping is that over the course of many conversations, lots of words, and a month of just, getting it out there and reminding people about this entire large, sprawling concept of blackness and what it is, we can get to a point where if we move the needle just at least a little bit
We
to
have
like
to.
make people stop and think instead of like just dressing, oh, well, all these black people are the same. Like, hold on, let's unpack this and really figure out, what's what.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think there are like some dire consequences to not moving in that direction. Even as Black people, as we reflect on these things, it's like if we are pushing each other to all fit into these narrow boxes, then earlier today I was having a conversation with some other Black folks at a table. We're talking about youth crime prevention and how our systems, kind of directly or indirectly encourage Black youth to, for lack of a better term, take each other's lives. And we were talking about the lack of representation in education, in healthcare, in the justice system, in, academia, etc. Now, here's where this box of Blackness becomes important in this conversation, is that if we are associating, Blackness with certain things and not other things, there is a lot of, discrimination, harm, barriers from the system, but we're also not really encouraging each other to enter into these fields, and to, persevere through the bullshit and the nonsense. We're not making certain choices to go into academia, or certain choices to become a science teacher, or, these sorts of things, or to, it seems like we're just, if we stay in these boxes, we're not populating all the areas of society that we need to populate in order to organize, network, and create power for ourselves.
That's really it. You're right.
It's not just like, oh, it was hard for me because people called me an Oreo. Like, yeah, that's tough, but like it's deeper than that.
I agree, man. I mean, I'm not going to drag you through the mud all in one episode to go through all the different aspects of it. But you're totally right. A lot of what we're talking about right now is going to be leading into conversations all over the map for the month, just because there's a lot that needs to happen, both in the external to the community and how they see Black people and see what's going on within, and also from within, to whether it's in some cases expect more of ourselves, in some cases to get over grudges or other things that have kept us divided from within, to get together, collaborate more, do more to boost each other up. There's a lot that needs to happen, and a lot that we need to kind of figure out, one conversation, one thing at a time, but it needs to happen. You're
definitely right. We need to be able to disagree respectfully and still stay in the conversation. It's just so many things, man, so many things, but a lot of challenges. It's when you're, speaking for North American Blacks in particular, is, we come from, I'm assuming that's your heritage. So when I say we come from a place where, our identities were stolen from us, in the transatlantic slave trade. Our languages were stolen, our names, our history, and then we were slaves for several hundred years, kind of, adopting this pseudo identity of the society that we lived in, and then we were quote unquote freed, and then kind of told to like create an identity out of thin air.
Basically.
Right. So I can understand why we're having these challenges. But I think it's also important for us to recognize, the roots of these challenges, so that we can resist the mental oppression of being put in the position of having our identities, our culture, our history taken away, and then being told to create it based on problematic ideas used to oppress us to begin with.
You're not wrong. You're very right. There's just so much. There's so much we could go into, but I'm gonna cut it off here, just so that we can, go back to what we need to do for the evening.
Man. Can you believe they used to call me like whitewashed in high school and shit like that?
Oh, I've been through that. I've been through that so much.
Like, I've been thinking about this stuff since I was like 15 years old, man. But anyway, that's a different
Oh yeah,
conversation.
it started early on. Yeah, mine was like I was one of those like in the gifted class.
Word, me started from me. It's like I'm not allowed to be smart, bro. Like I don't know.
Right? That was a problem too. Oh, the entire
Yeah,
acting white paradigm. Okay.
that's a
I'm
different
not getting
podcast.
into it. I'm not getting into it. But there's gonna be another
Yeah,
episode. There's gonna be many episodes. Do not worry. There's gonna be a lot. Asante, is there anywhere we can check you out and where we can follow what's going on with you and
yeah.
all the good work you're
You can
doing?
follow me on Twitter at AsanteV. So that's ASANTE capital V. Instagram at nerdy.black.guy. And you can throw
Nice.
my name in Google if you want to see my TED Talks. Again, just throw my name into what do you call it? YouTube. So that's ASANTE, last name HAUGHTON. I have the luck of having a not very common name on this side of the Atlantic, so it's not
True.
hard to find me.
True. I'll link up to everything as well though, so it's a lot
Wicked.
easier for everyone to track it down. But
Thank
thanks,
you.
man. Appreciate the time. And keep the fight up on your side, man. It's we as we all know, it's challenging. There's always a lot going on and a lot you have to navigate through with every passing day. But like you're saying, it's not getting. I would say it's getting easier as time goes on, but at least there's a little more. There's more
Definitely.
people who know more
Definitely. We
now
just have to
than
keep
before.
educating ourselves and, trying to represent ourselves as best as possible. We, of course, we want others to represent us accurately and as real, dynamic, full, whole people and not as caricatures. But I think first and foremost, we owe that to ourselves to do the same for each other and to accept each other for that as well.
That's it.
That's what's up.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and I'll make sure to get this out there. Let people know that there's a lot we have to work
Thank
on,
you.
but this is the starting point. What is Blackness? Let's figure it out.
For real. I'm about to go watch the Raptors and the Bucks. So
Don't let me keep you.
right.
Don't let me keep you. All right, we're
take
gonna
it easy.
finish up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Asante. Blackness isn't so easy to define, but one thing I think we can all agree on is that we can't let it define us or be defined for us. There are 1.2 million Black Canadian stories to tell, no two of them the same, so let's not cheapen ourselves by trying to make them all the same. I hope you enjoyed episode 1, and a big thanks to Asante Houghton for stepping up to start off the season. I hope we have 27 more conversations of this caliber to keep things going. But to everyone else, I hope you keep listening. If you want to get in on the action yourself, I suggest checking out the show notes or the blog series to find out how. For now though, keep well, and get ready for Live from the 3.5 episode 2, where we discuss what it's like being part of a community in a land that looks nothing like you. Keep your head up, y'all, and we'll see you then. Let's start up right away.
All right.
Hey, look at that. Okay. Great. Good thing I know how to edit so I can take all this stuff out. Anyway.
Nice.